You're listening to international investment advisor Doug Goldstein on the Goldstein on Gelt show, the financial show where we'll talk about how you can make the most of your money. With all the confusing financial chatter bombarding you each and every day, Goldstein on Gelt will give you the practical information you want and need about living a financially stable life. Here's your host, money maven Doug Goldstein.
Okay, we are back. We are talking to Rabbi Yaakov Spivak, who's the dean of Ayshel Avraham Rabbinical Seminary in Monsey, New York. He's also very involved in radio in New York. In fact, he has a nightly AM radio broadcast in the New York area. Rabbi Spivak, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Doug. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'd like to start by talking about America, because you're there, and of course I'm here in Israel, and about the immigration to the United States. You know, in the 1900s, a lot of Jewish and non-Jewish immigrants came to the U.S. because they saw it as the golden Medina, paved with the streets paved with gold. Some succeeded, some didn't. You know, there are a lot of Jews in Hollywood, for example. What would you say is the opportunities today? Is it still the same there?
No, it is not the same, Doug. America is going through what some have called a severe economic crisis. And the opportunities here are not what they used to be. That doesn't mean that there won't be a recovery. There is some hope. But right now, it seems to me what has happened is where America was always a manufacturing base. The real start it got actually was after World War II. We recovered from the Depression because of the war. It brought out manufacturing, and after World War II, we had knocked out all of the competition in Europe. Germany was in shambles, and all the production competition in Germany and in Europe and in the Far East and in Japan were gone. And we were the manufacturing kings of the world. There were jobs. Mothers could stay home and raise children. People bought in the suburbs. It was an incredibly wonderful time. And then what has happened over we had protective tariffs as well. What has happened over the last 20 years, 30 years, is you have GATT and NAFTA. These are agreements whereby we used to have protective tariffs and keeping out foreign competition coming into us, and so manufacturers had to manufacture here in America, because if they manufactured with the slave labor over in any other country, by the time they got it back here, there were all kinds of protective tariffs. With GATT and NAFTA, they were dropped. So therefore, manufacturers, with the use of FedEx and UPS and all the kind of air transportation, could ship their raw materials over there or get them over in a foreign country and then get them back here without the protective tariffs. So suddenly then, jobs in the factories drop to nothing, because first of all, you can have, if you're a manufacturer and you want to have something produced and you can produce it with slave labor, why pay American workers? So Americans lost jobs, and they went hurting. And then what happened was the jobs that were left a lot of times were taken by the lax immigration laws. So this 1-2 punch of NAFTA, GATT, and the mass immigration of people working for nothing has really crippled America, relatively speaking, compared to what it was.
That's interesting. So you're saying that the fact that the American borders were opened up for competition, meaning the tariffs were dropped and it allowed the whole world to compete for the U.S. market, you're saying it hurt the worker or the opportunities for immigration?
It hurt the American worker, although there is some feeling that, some of the manufacturers or some of the farmers need this cheap immigration labor that's coming in. So there's an argument against that, to be fair. But the fact is, in the overall, if you look at it, the American worker lost his job to slave labor overseas with the dropping of the protective tariffs, and he lost some of them to the to the immigrants that came into this country. Whereas they do help some American businesses, but in the overall, I think they hurt the American worker. So you got people out of work in this country, and also with the dropping of the tariffs, not only allowed the businesses in America to bring it back here, but it allowed foreign competition to come in here without, people who weren't even manufacturing, were not even based in this country. Manufacturers were not based here, could bring their products into this country. So that, I think, are the two major things that have really crippled America.
Mm-hmm. I see. I'm just wondering if it gave a lot of benefit to the consumer. In other words, we're talking about the worker, but with consumers being able to buy products for cheaper. A lot of people talk about in the old days how the American cars were really nothing special in terms of their quality, but then when a lot of competition came in, today your cars are better in many ways.
Absolutely, the cars are better, and
of course they produce somewhere else.
Yeah, but if the American worker doesn't have a job, Doug, where's he going to pay for the things in spite of the cheaper prices? And when you look around at the price of gas and the price of other things, I'm not so sure these things are cheaper. You know what I mean? Things are more expensive. Now, I know that I come from a different generation, and we used to kid the older generation how they remember things were cheaper. You go into a store today to buy a knish, you know what I mean? When I was, younger, you could buy it for 25, 50 cents. Now it's $4.50 for a knish, you know?
That's inflation.
That's inflation. So besides from the inflation, that, if the American worker doesn't have a job, it doesn't matter how cheap the thing is. He can't afford it.
We are talking to Rabbi Yaakov Spivak. He is the dean of Ayshel Avraham Rabbinical Seminary in Muncie. He's also on the radio as a nightly radio broadcast in the New York area. He talks a lot about what's going on in U.S. society, which is the topic that we're really pointing to today. If the U.S. is not the current Golden Medina, where do you think people should be looking to move for opportunities?
Well, just like you're hearing what's happening here, we're hearing what's happening in Israel, and I think Israel. I can't speak for the economy there because I don't live there, unfortunately. But the fact is that we may one day all of us be out of a job. Not to change the subject, but. The recent anti-Wall Street demonstrations at the Brooklyn Bridge, some of the rhetoric, I am told, was that Wall Street, just like Zionism, is a euphemism for Judaism, and anti-Zionist, it can be an anti-Semite. So Wall Street bankers, according to some, when they were screaming against the Wall Street bankers, it was a euphemism for Jewish businesses. So, where else are we going to go?
All right, so we've got Israel on the list.
What?
So we have Israel on the list of a possible destination.
It's a short list, Doug, a very short list. There was no list before World War II. There was no list in 1938. Mm-hmm. Now we got one name on the list. Now, hopefully, this thing's going to blow over. Hopefully, there is some signs, but right now, and I know what problems, and I'm not to say lashon hara on Israel. I know there's some problems economically with the dirot, with the apartments you're having there, etc. But there's a portion of the Israeli economy that's booming. As I look around my office, anything high tech. Intel and my cell phones and the computers. So much stuff is being produced over there. When you give those Yehudim, them Jews, when you give them a chance, and you don't get in their way, you don't block them from professions. They do a pretty good job, don't you think? Huh?
Yeah, there certainly is a lot going on in Israel. Let me ask another question that's come up in discussions with people in the U.S., which is that the U.S. economy today seems to be so driven by consumerism, and yet that is very likely what caused a huge part of the downfall, that people are borrowing money just to buy things to deal with their materialistic feelings today. And frankly, since I was a kid, it seems to have gotten worse. Is that a direction that's just going to keep getting worse, or are people getting more realistic?
How do you want me to answer that? As a talk show host or as Rabbi Spivak? How do you want me to answer that?
Wow, good question.
I'll answer it as Rabbi Spivak,
Thank you.
okay? And part talk show host. You get people who don't have the power of the media, Doug, as you well know, is so strong. The media can overturn the Soviet Union. How did the media get to the state that it was? How did the Soviet Union fall? What armies couldn't do. The sending of VHS videotapes from West Berlin to East Berlin to show them. Even though they built a wall, the wall couldn't stop videotapes showing how the life of the West was, and how materialistic, how much more, how better the life was in the West. And that got to the Soviet Union too, and the 70-year Soviet experiment failed. I mean, when you get, I remember that the president of Amway, I think it was Amway, said he went to the Soviet Union and he went down and he put his hands in the soil of the red soil of the Ukraine, and he said it was richer than the soil in the Midwest America. So how come the Soviets had to come buy American wheat? Because of the fact that the system didn't work. And this information, even though the Soviets tried to block it out with block out Radio Free Europe and block out everything, they couldn't block out the videotapes. And the power of the media literally destroyed the Soviet Union. Okay, that's how strong it was. Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall that Reagan said. It wasn't the Reagan that tore down the wall. It was the media that showed the people. Now, this same issue, that power of the media, when you have people that don't have money, okay, you have people that don't have it, and you constantly bombard them. I just talked about the good side of the media. But the people who are poor, and you bombard them with, you got to have this cell phone, you got to have this iPad, you got to have this, and anybody watching a football game or an athletic event in this country and is bombarded with all of this materialism. It just makes the people who don't have the money for these things just want them. You stick a credit card in their hand, and they got to have all these things, because that same media that can do for good can also influence for people to do crazy things. I got to have that iPad. I got to have that fancy car, and if I can't, and then the people think to themselves, if I can't get it straight, I'll get it by stealing, or I'll get it by going what?
Or by borrowing, by going into debt.
That's right, and that's the power of the media. They're both ways. The Kabbalists, the Mekubalim say that good and evil are two sides of the same coin, and what can be used for good can be used for evil. Just tell us that just like a person can be great on a high spiritual plane, he has a greatness, capacity for good, and capacity for evil, and so it is with media, and so it is with. That's why even the Chafetz Chaim this man was so focused on Lashon Hara, because he knew the power of information, the power of talk, and that when you sit a young kid down who lives in a situation that he doesn't have a lot of money, but he has some, and you bombard him 4, 5, 6 hours a day with all this materialism. He's got to have this and he's got to have that. That's part of the problem. And in a free society, in a society of freedom of the press and free speech, which is important, that's the downside.
We have the ups and downs. We have been talking to Rabbi Yaakov Spivak, who is a New York radio show host, as well as in charge of the Ayshel Avraham Rabbinical Seminary. Rabbi, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you, but unfortunately we're out of time. Tell me, how can people just follow you or or listen to your radio show, perhaps online?
If they want to hear about the radio show online, they go to www.jewishradionetwork.net. That's jewishradionetwork.net, and then they'll be able to go on there and either see the radio, or when we have television, just click it on and they can hear us. And we sometimes, we would love to run your program sometimes with us too.
Great. Rabbi Yaakov Spivak, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.